Hey guys, welcome back to my Procreate tattoo design series. Today I will be talking about how I created this particular design. It is from my chakra healing series from when I went to the Amazon rainforest to go do ayahuasca, and during my ceremonies I had visions of several different ideas and all of them having to do with the chakras. And so this particular one is called Creative Transformation. Orange basically representing your sacral chakra, your source of creative expression and pleasure and emotions. And I really wanted to, as far as like the name transformation, butterfly and caterpillar I saw it a ton when I was out there. So I wanted this to be representing of transformation and evolution in oneself. And the sacred geometry back here is all the isometric stars. This basically, the sacred geometry amplifies connection to spirit to clear your channels for creative flow. So this was this series. This tattoo has already been taken, but I will show you how I designed it. Okay, since I'm doing a current wanna do, what happens is that I get to choose what I wanna do. And as a tattooist, that's what we do. So I'm not designing for someone, I'm designing a wanna do. And so with that being said, I normally just, when I start designing, I just go for my references, which is mostly in my albums, and I love lady faces. If you look at my work, I always do lady faces. Here are just a few, but this is the one that I chose. Beautiful. So I'm just gonna erase, soft brush, airbrushing, background here. And I'm pressing 2 fingers onto the screen whenever I wanna undo something. So you'll notice me doing that a lot. And I could use the selection tool if I wanted to erase all this, but this is just actually much faster for me. Okay. Now, I love doing black and gray, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna click on saturation. I'm gonna lower the saturation down and all the way down that way. I normally go into curves and mess with the contrast here. So it can be up or down. Personally, I kind of like it like right around there. It gives me a bit of values. We have like our darkest dark into our lightest light. So for me, I want to make sure that I have like at least my 5 value system whenever I'm doing something like this. So that when I'm tattooing it, depending on the skin tone, I can figure out what value the skin tone is and what other values I will need as far as like the tones. And I normally use opaque black and gray stuff. So if you guys want to check out my work, you'll understand what I mean. Okay, so now that I have her here, I'm gonna go ahead and grab that butterfly. Perfect. And so with this, I press the selection tool on automatic, and then I just slide a little bit right. Selection threshold, as you noticed, was right up there. This means that it'll just select all this, and then if I want to slide all the way over, so for example, I go like this and I slide all the way over, it'll cover the entire page. Or if I just do this, you'll notice how it starts to select threshold is like the threshold is leaving other parts of it. So I want it to be pretty close to the butterfly. I don't want anything else. And there we have it. So I'm going to click my eraser tool. Erase all the background. I'm noticing here that it didn't quite get all of it here, so I'll just erase some of that back here. Alrighty, and see. So we'll move this right around here. So what I'm doing here is I just want to make sure that I'm covering this eye completely, but also leaving some room for this nose so that I see the actual bridge of the nose a little bit, so we can differentiate between right in here and right in here. This also gives shape. So when I'm looking at the overall design, I can still see the nose, and we're looking for longevity whenever we're doing tattooing. So we want to know that the heel is going to be great. So we want to do this, make sure that this is all nice and clear. And so that we get like clear line for the nose. So we know that this is a nose. It's not going to get washed out or anything. I also just want to make sure that I am close to this eye, but not covering the eye or any of the creases, not getting too on top of it. So actually I'm probably gonna, let me just shrink that down just a little bit. So there we have it. Make sure that's all nice and chillaxing. I have brushes, imported brushes that give me circles, ovals, that kind of thing. So for me, make sure I just have black. There we go. I normally just duplicate this to get it as dark as I'd like. I like the thinner, whiter, like thinner lines and then going darker because that's just what I prefer. But yeah, so then now as I want to freeform this, I'll just make it into an oval. Oh, I guess apparently I made another oval back there. That's okay. Just get rid of that. There we go. So now I just have a simple oval here. There, that looks good to me. So I will put this layer behind all the layers because I want it to be behind her. And anything that's not in the frame, I erase. So for her, I will erase all of this here. Okay, so now I go ahead and just grab some of my favorite other lady faces. What I really like is her hands. So I am just going to dumb this centroid down, erase all of this reference here, get rid of most of it. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna utilize my selection tool just to make sure that I have, we'll do freehand so that I can just make sure I grab all that I need. Kind of like the shadows in the fingers, so I'm gonna leave those in there. And actually, I will invert that. Erase everything that is not necessary. I will also hold that down. I can also add on some more stuff here. So I'm noticing that this wasn't selected either. So I can just add that on and erase that area of that. So hold down, erase the area, cool beans, now we've got it. So I'm just going to put her hands in an area that I really want. Oops. So personally for me, let's see. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the ticket. Okay, cool. So then just erasing anything that is showing. Here we go. I always like to make sure that we have everything there. Actually, let's move this up a little bit. I'm going to morph it a little bit more. There we go. I kind of like her fingers bent. So you can still understand what's happening on her mouth and you can still see what's going on here. So that's my biggest thing for me, is that just like everything is very clear, especially when it comes to tattooing. You want to just make sure that it looks really good as a tattoo for longevity. So now I'm going to go ahead and I want to add some hair to her. Oops, I don't want to add that. So normally with hair, what I do is I'll utilize first airbrushing. And just, it does take knowledge to know how the skull works and how hair and skin kind of go over the skull. But since I already know that, I'm just mapping it out. There we go. giving her some hair here, and then I will erase just so it's not so blurry. Okay, there's that. And this looks a little blurry here. I also want to go ahead and add some shoulders to her since this area is it's empty. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I utilize the dropper tool to understand what my grayscale is and just continue from that. So since I want to actually, before I do that, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm actually gonna add the caterpillar in just to make sure I don't do any extra work I don't have to. So let me go ahead and add the caterpillar in. Elements. Okay. Love this guy. I'm gonna make him on top of everything so I can see him. Again, with the freehand selection tool, just cut him all the way out. Okay, so I'll invert that, erase, hide, get eraser, get that erasing all off. Perfect. So I'm just gonna add him to my finger. I just did that with a Texas accent. Okay, so I'm gonna freeform it so I can make sure that he wraps around the way that I like. Stretch a little bit that way. What I really enjoy is I like things that are breaking up the frame. Not only is this a tactic for tattooers so that they don't have to do a complete circle and accidentally make a fool of themselves, it's a thing. It happens. We're not perfect, we're human, so that happens. So I love a break in all the circle. That's just a beautiful tactic, but also just compositionally, it's beautifully done because then it gives you breaks, it gives you stops. Like every time you're looking at a design, you're looking at the stop within it. So you're like, oh, stop here, let me look at this caterpillar. Oh, stop here, let me look at this butterfly. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure that I get all this off of him here. And in order for him to really look like he is sitting on her finger, I am going to create another layer. I'm gonna get back to my airbrush soft brush, and since that is already on black, I'm actually gonna move this down underneath him. And then I'm actually gonna move the opacity down just a hair, erase this, go back here. Let's get it a little bit closer. And just give him a little shadowing so that he looks like he is actually sitting on top. And so it gives it a little bit of a shadow. Okay, and then so I normally will duplicate this, and you can see how it's a little bit darker, and I'll actually just move it a little bit because the way anything sits on anything that creates a shadow, some parts of it is going to be darker than others. So even though this is so small and I'll probably just utilize a black when I'm doing it, it's always just good because I'm a detail-oriented human being. So this is, I'll just move it back just a hair. Do it one more time so that, there we go. So I'm just noticing that it's just darker up at the top because he's holding it closer, and then the rest of his body isn't so black. So we got that. Perfect. Okay, so I actually don't particularly, let's see, actually, let's keep moving. So now that I know that he's here, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is, oops, I am going to utilize 2 fingers. What is happening? I'm gonna utilize 2 fingers and I'm gonna pinch those together so it becomes one layer. That's all I need. And then now I am going to make sure that these 2 are grouped together because those are a part of each other. I am also going to make sure that these 2 and 3 are grouped together because this is all one layer here. Although, oops, what just happened? There we go. Perfect. I like to keep things everything pretty straight and narrow. This butterfly doesn't belong here. I'm just gonna put him up. He is not in any group. These two are in a group. That's what we like. Okay, so now I'm going to create her shoulder. So I'm gonna create a layer right above her. Make sure that I'm on my airbrushing tool, utilize my eyedropper in order to see, and basically just start painting on a shoulder for her. Now, again, you should be well versed in anatomy in order for yourself to do this. I would just highly recommend it. But for me right now, what I'm doing is basically giving it just a fat mid-tone, and then I will begin to add in other tones. I think that's a little, we'll use my smudge tool to kind of smudge everything out, to blend it in so that everything feels much smoother. And since these are two different layers, it's going to cause it to be see-through for a second here. Oops, there we go. Bring in a little bit more darkness to this area. And then I do have my Laura Rubin skin set, which I absolutely love. And if I really want to get crazy with it, I can always add some skin texture here. Alrighty. So that it blends in. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and erase everything behind. There we go. So it kind of gives it that feel that she's got her shoulder going on here. I think I want to just make this area just a little bit darker. Beautiful. All right. So now that we have that, I want to go ahead and add background. So let's go ahead and add the background here. Actually, I don't like what this is, so I'm gonna hold it. And normally what happens when you hold it down, it'll tell you which layer it's on, and I'm just gonna erase it. So easy peasy. Hold it down, tells you what layer it's on. Cool. Now that that's all figured out and out of my way, I'm gonna put in some of this background. So insert a photo, add albums. No, that's not the one I used. Okay, so now I'm going to pull in the isometric. Here we go. So I liked this particular one, super thin, although I know I could find it as a full pattern, a full page pattern. I couldn't find it this thin in a full page pattern. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm going to use my selection tool. I'm gonna keep it on automatic. I'm going to select all the black. I'm going to invert, I'm going to erase. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate. There we go. Duplicate. In order to slip it right in, I can tap and it'll move the entire thing. So if I get up close for you, notice like right here, how it moves when I tap it. Perfect. That's perfect. I'm thinking maybe one more, but I'm going to pull those all together. I pinched those together. Yeah, I think I need just about one more. And so I can just unduplicate that and add one more. Perfect. And now I will pinch them again, create one layer. And I gotta do this down here. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to move this entire layer behind the oval. Erase everything that's not meant to be on the outside of the oval. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to create my background underneath everything. And really I wanted to follow the coloring of the butterfly. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. I'm gonna go back to my airbrushing and I'll blow this up a little bit. And I'm just gonna start, actually, I am going to select my oval. Let's go back here, find the coloring, pull the drop over and fill her in. So I'm gonna fill this part in. Actually going to erase that, I'm gonna duplicate that actually. I'm gonna fill this in here. Here we go. That can go behind, this can go above everything. So now that we can see, do the same thing here. And pull over and drop. So now I have two layers of the same color that I really like. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to remove the opacity and begin to erase to keep that gradation going. This is just my way, the fastest way that I know. I welcome all suggestions. Alrighty, and now I would prefer all of this to be white. So I'm gonna go to saturation. I'm going to lower the saturation. I'm gonna up the brightness. So you see, there we go. So that went from here to here. Now it's inverted. That's how I will do it on the skin. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into makeup. So for makeup, I normally super simple. I'm a super simple gal. I like to keep it simple. My designs are meant to be done in a matter of time that I can, you know, save myself that I'm not doing it all day long. And because I like to spend most of my time with a tattoo. So this is a simple way of doing this. I know there are a million other ways. You can more than welcome to suggest them to me, but this is just my way. So I am going to go into this grouping here. I'm going to add a layer. I'm also going to go ahead and go into here and find my like reddish color that I really like. I'm gonna be using airbrushing soft brush. That's my normal that I love to use. Actually, before I do, I'm going to go ahead and erase some of these fingers down real quick. What is happening? So that I can see her mouth. Okay, perfect. So back to coloring her lips. Okay. So I think I kind of like it darker, but I'm going to go for it with this one. So I'm just going to press the normal button here and I'm going to go to overlay. This is a really simple way of putting makeup on or something like that on to a black and white picture. For me, a lot of times whenever I'm doing tattoos, I only like to add one color if I'm doing full black and gray. So for this, I would normally, now since I am doing some reds and some oranges and some yellows, I'm going to keep that color scheme. So I'm actually going to remove like any of this gray stuff that's happening in the caterpillar and things like that, but from the tattoo. But for now, we're just going to focus on the makeup. And so now I'm going to go to, since I've created that for the lips, I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to do the same thing with the eyes. And with eyes, normally you have your, if you want to be really simple about it, you have your darkest at the top. You have your mid about underneath the iris. And then you have your bright at the bottom because it's a reflection. As the eye circles down, you see the eye curves this way. Eye goes like this. So when we think about that, we're looking at what's catching the light. So we have our highlight here, our highlight right there. And then as it shapes down, just like in a sphere, you're going to notice that there's going to be a bounce back light from the lid right here up to here. That's the reason why it's lighter. So that's what we want to do. Okay. So we have that. We will go ahead and just get these all nice and blended. It's just a little bit of it so it's not sticking outside. I will also overlay this as well. Actually, I'll just lower the opacity here. And I will erase anything that's getting too much in the way of that. Let me go ahead and overlay this so I can see some of what's going on in her actual eye and up the opacity there. And then I'm actually just going to go ahead and duplicate it and see what that does and do a normal. So there's not double overlays. And then dumb this down a little bit. There we go. So I have two. So if you notice, I have one overlay, which is really light and the opacity is all the way at its max. So I duplicated it here. I have it at normal. And this is what normal at max opacity. And I'm just gonna dumb it down just a hair, just to keep it nice and bright. So there we go. So we have double layers for that one. And the same thing with the makeup. So let's go ahead and do that. Makeup, I just used black. Yeah, okay, so cool. So again, I'll just use, go the shape of her face. Oops, it's too big. So yeah, you just want to follow the shape of her face when you're doing this. There we go. And then adding this little part here. See, for here on this side, I do want to make sure that I can see the other side of her face when I do this. Perfect. Cool. So that's essentially it right there for her face. I can fix all this other stuff a little bit later, but just for sake of this tutorial, I will go ahead and, again, it's the same thing like the eyes, same thing like the mouth. We just want to overlay it. And you see here how it's really, it like allows some of the highlights to shine through to make it look really realistic. Well, it's perfect. So for me, I kind of like it a little darker in some areas. So I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to dumb down this area. Actually, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start erasing this particular layer. because I don't like this part being super dark right here, because that's unnecessary. But I did like, let me go ahead and lower the opacity. I did like this. This part all is fine. Remove all that. But I did like how dark these kinds of areas were here. Then I'll remove some of this here. And right here on the nose, so we can differentiate. So that for me looks really nice. Again, we'll do this with her eyes. I always like really dark eyes. For me, I just like that smoky eye. That's just, let's lower this here. Let's dumb this down. Perfect. And easy peasy. Go in here, go into overlay. I'm gonna dumb that down just a hair. See a little bit more of that. And smudge it just so, you know, get some nice shadow. And I'm gonna erase some of it too because it's too far out for me. All right, beautiful. Perfect. And so that's basically how I created that tattoo design.